All right. Happy Monday, everybody. Brandon Shanahan here with the fellas, Cornhusker Connection. Got bowl games to talk about. We got a Heisman Trophy winner. We got a new defensive coordinator in Lincoln. How we doing, fellas?
Very good.
Good.
Good, good, good. Real quick, if you're, watching right now or hearing the sound of my voice, like the video, subscribe, follow the Twitter. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt you at all. It helps us out a ton. So just want to throw that out there. But first big piece of news, um, I think they announced a new defensive coordinator right after we got done recording last week, if
Yeah,
I'm not
pretty much.
mistaken.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so that's cool. So we get to sit on that for another week. But John Butler officially announced as the defensive coordinator. Certainly one of the names that we threw out right when we learned that Tony White was leaving. But what were your initial thoughts when you heard that they were going internal?
I like to a lot. I like to hire a lot because I feel like from what Matt Rule was saying, how he wanted to kind of keep the defense as the same as possible, but changing a few things around. So you have somebody that's been around the program for a year, knows what that defense was like, and it also allows them to have a better relationship with those players and see what their strengths and weaknesses are. So hopefully we can key in on that next year and run a really solid defense. Um, I also think the experience, albeit when he was with Penn State, like Brooke was telling us, uh, didn't go great. But I think making that leap to the NFL and then coming back, I think it brings a lot of experience. And you hear a lot of people start saying like it seems like grown-ups are running the program now, um, which I don't know fully what that means, but I'm excited for the change to our already really really solid defense.
Yeah, I think overall it's a solid hire. Not much changes. Um, I don't know. A lot remains to be seen because he really hasn't called plays in the last decade. So, is there some rust there, or is he going to be a lot better than he was at Penn State? Because a part of his time at Penn State was the sanctions that they went through in 2013. So their roster was pretty depleted and a lot going on there. But I mean, overall, they were like a middle of the road Big Ten defense when he was at Penn State. So I'm hoping that, with the resources we have and then Phil Snow and the new D line coach we got from Kansas City, and then recently the UCF D coordinator is now our DB's coach. I mean, and he seems like a star. So there's a lot of guys with experience, and having so many good position coaches will only uplift Butler's defense. So I think there's some real potential there.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't like the most exciting of hires. I mean, I think that we were throwing out names like Jim Leonard that would have been very kind of more like a fireworks show than anything else. And just some other head coaches around there that would be looking to move into that defensive coordinator role. But I do appreciate the sense of consistency. I mean, obviously you're making changes offensively and kind of revamping what you want to do there and who you have calling the plays on that side of the football. I certainly don't hate the idea of trying to keep at least one side of the football consistent at a time, which is exactly what they're doing. Another thing that resonated with me is when Matt Rule was talking about John Butler, he was talking how much the players wanted him to be the next coach. And I mean, if those are the guys that are, in the meeting rooms at 5 a.m. and in the weight rooms, and that's the kind of guy that they want to go to war for, I'm all for it, and especially because it's a finicky position because I I believe the whole reason he came to Nebraska was so he could get on a defensive coordinator track. Like it would be really disappointing for him to come here and then get passed on when this opportunity came up with Tony White leaving. So I'm all here for it. I'm excited to see what he does, and I'm excited that they're keeping some type of consistency and a guy that the players are looking to rally around.
Yeah, you love
And one
a
thing
guy
that
that people want to rally around.
one thing that confused me was the people on Twitter talking about Tony White's defense being bad this year, and I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I mean, we had the 19th ranked defense in the country, so how much more how much better can it get from theirs?
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't think we were
Nebraska
bad
Twitter
by
is
any.
pretty insufferable.
Yes, yeah.
Well, that's true. That's
They want everything to be perfect, and that's not realistic. At least not where we're at right now. I thought the defense was really good. I just think that there were some things that would happen during games, like the one that I remember is that Iowa game when I forget his name. I'm like Brett now. The star running back for Iowa broke out
Caleb
that long
Johnson,
run. Yeah,
Heisman
it
snub.
just seemed like in a lot of the games we were letting those big plays happen. And I know that you can't always be perfect at all the time. I get that. But I think that was just the frustrating part for me is how we would be so good and then boom, those things happen that flip the momentum and then we're fighting back.
I
And
mean,
so I was.
but at the end of the day, it's like the Iowa game, we only gave up 13 points. Like that game's on our offense. You can't score 10 points and expect to win a game.
For sure. And I was certainly critical of Tony White from the aspect of I'm not all that hurt that he's not on our staff anymore. I would have loved to have had him back and to run it back maybe with some more talented pieces on the defense. I thought that is a lot where the defense was, but I'm not losing any sleep over it because I think a good marker for mediocrity is inconsistency. And that's the key theme that I think of with this defense. They were outstanding at times. They gave up 13 points to Iowa. They held Ohio State in check. They also gave up 400 yards to a 5-7 Wisconsin team. And they also gave up 56 points to Indiana. And they also almost got run out of their own building by UCLA in the first half. Like there's certainly moments where I feel like that 20th points per game ranking is a bit misleading. They also gave up more than 6 yards of play, and that ranks about 50th. So if you want to kind of factor that in on how they were on a per play basis, certainly wasn't good and felt like they took a step back. But again, that's all kind of nitpicky because with all that said, he was still the best of the three coordinators that we had. And every loss that we had, you could absolutely point to 4 or 5 other people before Tony White. But that's where my criticism of him came was I'm not losing any sleep over having to replace him when it seemed like there was a lot of panic as soon as he announced that he was leaving or as soon as it was announced that he was leaving.
I'm in the same boat. I'm not mad that he left, but at the same time, it's like we do a lot of dancing around the fact that our offense was the bigger problem this year. Like, yeah, the 6 yard per play sucks. Giving up 56 to Indiana wasn't great, but our offense also turned the ball over 3 or 4 times that game and put them in bad spots. So, and they've only scored 7, and then the UCLA game, Dylan Raiola almost throws a pick six to start the second half, and the UCLA game they still only gave up 27 with all that went wrong. And in a low scoring game, yeah, you want to keep that number lower, but if being truthful, it's if we don't have Tony White and it's someone else, like we may be staring down the barrel of 3-9, 4-8.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not calling for Tony White to have been fired. But I think if a change has to be made, then it has to be made. Maybe he felt stagnant. We all thought that he was going to be a head coach this year. That obviously doesn't happen. I think, and we've made changes to the offense, to your point, because they were so bad. I don't think that this is a backwards move. I could see it as like a lateral move, and if that's the case, then I'm fine with that. Because to your point again, Brooke, the defense was solid all year. Just a few things happen in a lot of these games that did not go our way.
Yeah, it's Dylan has to be better. Our offense has to be better. Until our offense starts scoring about 30 points a game and, you know, not turning the ball over and putting our defense in bad positions, it's like that's one thing I don't understand about why we keep pointing fingers at the defense. It's just weird to me. I don't get that. Like, not every defensive metric goes our way, but we've seen some pretty bad Nebraska D coordinators and defenses over the last 10 years. And to have Tony White here for as long as we did was awesome. And, you know, I'm kind of neutral about it. Like Brandon said, like, you know, it's, if he doesn't want to be here, then, you know, good luck wherever you go. But I mean, to think that there's much better out there is like, I don't know.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm neutral. Like, I'm absolutely praying for his downfall, and will be hate watching Florida State with
See,
every
there it
opportunity
is.
that I get. But I don't think that it's. I don't know. It's a fine line between sounding crazy that I'm happy that he's gone, because I'm not happy that he's gone, but I certainly don't think there's any room to panic. And certainly, if he did stay, I would have hoped that certain things would have been addressed throughout the offseason. But nonetheless, I'm very much not neutral. I am hate watching Florida State hard this year. The defense is going to look very different, obviously, with the new coach. But also, another reason why I'm so mad at Tony White for leaving is a lot of transfers coming out. Jamari Butler announcing he's going to LSU, Prince Well going to Ole Miss. I do think it's kind of fun that neither of those guys are going to Florida State, like I kind of would have expected them to. James Williams hasn't announced where he's going. I would imagine he lands at Florida State with Terrence Knighton there, but who knows? I mean, I thought that they would have gotten at least somebody from Nebraska's departures. Does that make you feel better or worse that they're not going to Florida State?
Makes me feel worse because those two guys being SEC talents that we had on our roster that we couldn't retain really fucking blows, if I'm being honest. Obviously, we got the Missouri kid and Keona Davis coming back now, but it just goes to show you that we wasted some talent this year. The way our schedule's set up, we should have been way better than 6-6, but yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of hurt about how this year turns out, and then to see those guys to go to bigger and better places, like, I really fucking hate that, because when you have the cream of the crop talent here, it's like you should be able to win games with that.
I agree. I feel the same way. It would, if they're leaving just because they want to follow their guy, that's one thing. But just to leave sucks.
Yeah, that's a bummer. I'm landing right there with you, because I mean, I know relationships matter so much where these guys are trying to build their future with. And when they entered the portal right after that news had come out, it was kind of the expectation, I thought. But interesting to think about. And then it looks like Bayer went to Missouri, which I thought was interesting. All the the Missouri fans crying about Nebraska tampering. And now they're trying to poach one of our guys. So I thought that was cool. But big news, Nairi Williams. Or Williams Nairi?
I think it's... I'm not 100% sure.
I think his first name is Williams, yeah.
Well, yeah, because let me show you what I'm looking at here, because he doesn't do me a whole lot of favors with trying to figure it out, because his at name is Nairi Williams. And then his name up here is Williams Nairi.
I'm pretty sure on the back of his jersey it says Nairi, so I think it's...
Yeah. Well, we got him. One of the prize recruits of the last cycle goes to Missouri, redshirt, so he gets his 4 games in, comes to Nebraska. Was very interested in coming to Nebraska before committing to Missouri anyways. Now, Coach Mosey, I think, was his high school coach down in Kansas City. Certainly doesn't help or it doesn't hurt having those kind of relationships. And now he's coming back, and I'm super stoked. I would, if we were to go through those main four guys that transferred out, throw in Williams in that bunch, I would rank Williams as probably my one or two top top targets. I think I would have rather had Jamari Butler back, but Williams I think would be a close second, just with his eligibility.
Yeah.
With Butler you get the experience, but you don't have the timeline like maybe you want. But with Williams you get the timeline, but not the experience that you want.
Yeah, he's going to be kind of a project. Like, you can't teach size and speed like he has, so that's why he was, the number one player in the portal and a 5-star coming out. But he is very raw still, so hopefully, like, we get him in, develop him a little bit, and at least this year being in on every passing situation.
It'll be curious to see how.
Yeah, we
curious to see how it shapes up, because he had kind of, in everything that I was reading, it was kind of the expectation that he probably wouldn't push for a starter spot for Missouri as a true freshman, but that he would kind of, be well into the twos, and obviously doesn't get to a whole lot of playing time. But I wonder how much of that is just, well, if he's not going to start, we might as well redshirt him and hopefully get 4 full years out of him. So does that worry you at all that he didn't get a whole lot of snaps, or is it pretty justifiable that if he's not going to, get 60% of the snaps every game, maybe set him back?
For me, it doesn't worry me too much with him specifically, just because he's so young. Missouri was in a compete now mode, and they had some senior guys ahead of him, and they want to get them on the field as much as possible. They weren't in very many blowout situations where they could throw them in there, but I think there are warning signs there. But also, like I said before, you can't teach 6'6" and fast, like quick twitch guys on the end. Like, he's definitely got an NFL body and NFL speed, so I think it's just up to him and the people around him to develop him. So, I mean, it's definitely, I think any program in the country takes him on as a project. So, happy we have him.
And the fact that we got an NFL guy to come in and coach, that should be a huge, huge blessing for us. The fact that he knows what the best guys in the NFL are doing to prepare and train, I think is going to do wonders for everybody on that defensive line.
Yeah, I'm stoked. It's certainly something where, like, if it doesn't work out, it's probably something that we look back on and like, man, we probably should have paid more attention to that. The fact that he couldn't get on the field at Missouri, but like Brooke said, Missouri was in a win now situation. Johnny Walker Jr. is going to be a first-round draft pick at the end. So, I mean, it's not like he went somewhere where it was obvious that he would get playing time.
Yeah, it's not like he went to Liberty or something, and they're like, oh, of course he's going to start.
It just kind of, worst case scenario, thinks of a guy like Princewell, who, comes in super talented, and you hope to have a long-term project with him, and then he leaves before he can kind of eat any of the fruits, especially in a very crowded defensive line room at Nebraska. But I'm stoked. I think it's certainly with the departures, it feels like that room opens up quite a bit for maybe him to get some more reps early on compared to, if he had gone elsewhere. But I'm super stoked. I think he's going to be a game changer.
Yeah, we need to add a few more portal guys for sure, because our D-line room, you have Van Poppel still, Keona Davis, obviously Williams, Nawari now. But after that, it's like we're kind of thin.
I mean, it depends on what you think of McGahee and Shavers as well. Like, are they going to be playing outside linebacker? Are they going to be hand on the ground rushing the passer. I'm not sure what their role is going to be yet. I would lean more toward like an outside linebacker role for them.
Yeah.
Um,
Probably OLB or one of them will play that jack spot.
yeah. So, yeah, it's definitely thinning out. You don't have the two big guys up front anymore, the staples. So opens up the room for Van Poppel and Davis, and then we'll see what we do on the edge. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And I think talking about transfers, I think those core guys that you mentioned that are staying, Vincent Shavers, McGahee, and even Van Poppel, I think those are very much cornerstone pieces where it's a bummer to lose Jamari Butler. It's a bummer to lose a guy with such a high ceiling like Princewell. It's a bummer to lose somebody who seemed like he had so much potential like James Williams. But I mean, those are the kind of guys who got brought in under this Matt Rule era, under the vision that they're trying to project. Those I think would have stung a lot more if they had left. I mean, Van Poppel basically sat the whole year. I mean, he played his 4 games, but kind of with the notion that like, all right, 2025 is going to be the year for you. And then of course, Vincent Shavers and McGahee get reps, but only in ways that you could expect as a freshman. But I think if those guys were to leave, that would have signified something as, okay, well, something's disconnected with the vision that we were brought in here for, compared to guys like, Jamari and Princewell, who, maybe their individual visions have changed for what they wanted. I don't know. But I think it's very much worth mentioning that those guys are huge stays.
Absolutely. And then, probably at the linebacker position, you think Dawson, Merritt, or Christian Jones come in and play right away.
I could see both making huge impacts this year.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised about that.
I would like that.
Then on the back end, you have Blyhill, Marquise Buford, Hartzog. You still have Sear Wright.
Mm-hmm. Do you think what's his first name? Marcus Buford's brother. Do you think he plays a decent amount this year?
He could.
He got some time. I just don't know how that shakes out. He could. He definitely could. If not, I bet they bring in at least 1 or 2 portal guys. I think you're going to see a lot of portal guys on defense.
Yeah, I mean, we need to refill the safety spot. So whether that's internal or you go out and get somebody, and then corner, because it seems. I mean, obviously, you're never going to say no to evaluating talent outside of your team. At least you shouldn't be. But I feel like, for the most part, the front 7 is looking pretty nice. Albeit you would probably want more experience in the middle of the field for your backers. But I don't think it's never a bad thing if you have a guy that's a freshman that's ready to play. I'll never say no to that.
And it's kind of a matter of, I mean, we had plenty of experience last year and went 6-6. Is it, maybe a little more exciting to, have some of that high ceiling kind of talent out there? Maybe. Who knows? I mean, I guess if we go 6-6 next year, it'll be like, okay, well, I guess, there's some other things to fix. But this certainly seems like, at least a different direction. And I love some of those guys who came back year after year and super stoked that guys like Gifford get into a bowl game and all that. But, I mean, maybe it's, exciting to have, new faces out there.
Yeah. And you can't be on the job training for freshmen, just throwing them into the fire and letting them learn. And it's not empty. I think we have Javin Wright still coming back.
Oh, yeah.
It was hurt this year. So, I mean, we'll have some veteran guys in that room, but I think Tyler's right. One, if not both of those guys, are going to play some meaningful snaps.
Yeah. One might start right away and the other might rotate, or we'll see how that goes. I'm excited though. And it's going to be good. And right now it sounds good because I'm kind of just leaning on, there was a stink in the locker room with some of these guys. They couldn't quite figure out how to win. But if the same thing happens next year, then it's going to be a tough way to to get my way out of that one.
Yeah. I
But
think there
speaking,
was. Go ahead, Brandon.
well, I was just going to move on here because next year we have our schedule. If we're ready to get
Yeah.
into that. So I'll share that on the screen here. But of course, we already knew the home and away games, but now we get to see how they're ordered. We start with Cincinnati. Also, just announced that that'll be an Arrowhead. So love that
This supposed to
for
be in Texas, right? Initially.
Indianapolis.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So it was a Cincinnati home game, and then they were looking to move it to a bigger venue to try to sell more tickets. And then they're like, okay, well, we know that Nebraska fans are gonna be paying the bill on this, so we're gonna try to move it to stadium closer to them. Which I mean, I guess I'm living in a Nebraska bubble. I don't know if that's ever been done before. That they're hosting a game, they get a home game, and their thought process is how do we get this closer to our opponent?
Crazy.
Let's see here. And then we got Akron. Only good things have happened since playing Akron as of late. HCU. And we start off Big Ten play with Michigan at home. Possibly Bryce Underwood's first Big Ten game. Bye week after that, Michigan State at Maryland, at Minnesota, Northwestern, USC, UCLA. USC at home, UCLA on the road. Bye week at Penn State, and then against Iowa to wrap up the season at home. Seems pretty favorable.
Yeah, but I did read that we're playing. I can't remember if it was 4 or 5 teams coming off a bye again this year, so that sucks.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. I'll say this, that middle chunk, Michigan State to UCLA, should all be winnable games for us. Like, at Minnesota will be tough.
Those games are always so hard for Nebraska.
Potentially at UCLA could be one, and USC at home. But, I mean, truthfully, the only one that like is really, really scary is the at Penn State at the end of the year. Outside of that, it's like we will have a fighting chance in all of those.
I think so too. It is scary to kind of look at. Okay, Michigan's probably going to be better. USC's probably going to be better. UCLA's probably going to be better. Penn State's always going to be a nightmare on the road, especially depending on how their schedule shapes up. That might be a whiteout kind of atmosphere, knowing how Big Noon likes to come in, take their biggest games.
And Drew Aller, he's coming back.
He is coming back.
So, yep.
That sucks for us, but
didn't realize Villanova had a football team, but good on them for tough out of conference schedule.
But we get Michigan, USC, and Iowa all at home, which, I mean, those are huge wins for us.
That's a good draw.
Yeah.
And I think getting Bryce Underwood his first Big Ten game, potentially, I would imagine they'll give him the keys to the ship. That's favorable if you ask me. I mean,
and
that's
Michigan
not
loses a lot of their All-American defense from this year, like Mason Graham, Will Johnson.
Offensive line's going to start to get picked apart here.
Yeah, like they will reload Michigan, plug in pieces and getting them early on in the year.
Michigan State will also probably be better. I don't know much about what direction Maryland and Minnesota is trending, but I'm so goddamn tired of losing to Minnesota.
Yeah, it's going to be so annoying if Malachi Coleman goes to Minnesota and just absolutely torches us. I can see that shit happening.
I'm not all that worried about that.
I'm a little worried if I'm being honest.
Yeah, those games mean more.
But to be fair, we went up there and took Emmett Johnson out of Minnesota, so
that's true.
But overall, I think favorable. Like Brooke had laid it out, a lot of winnable games. It's just the problem is that we can't win those games as of the last 7 years. But plenty of meat on the bone, that's for sure.
Shaping up for a good Matt Rule third year.
What number do you think he needs to get to next year?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, what would deem a good season?
I want to say 10. I want to say 10.
10 would be a good season.
10 would be, quite honestly, 10 would be a great season.
10 would be a great season.
I think realistically, though, I think you're looking 9. Worst case scenario, 8. But I think the 9 or 10, I think, is going to be just a great season for us.
I think he's got to at least get 9 regular season.
Yeah.
Yeah,
especially with how weak that non-con is. I think you got to get 9.
Yeah, I think 9's the number because 8 feels like it's just a bit disappointing, and of course, 9 feels good, 10 feels great, 7
would feel icky.
Oh
yeah. Yeah,
I can talk myself into 7 though. Certainly, toward the end of the year, I could be like,
I would not.
Better than last year.
If we're sitting there 7-5, you ask me saying it's time to up his start.
Yeah, I imagine Brooke just said it's time to move on from Matt Rule if we win 7 games.
I think you start having those conversations.
Yeah.
I think you start having those conversations.
Absolutely.
Cut out, Brooke. I was trying to figure out what you said.
Oh,
but is that about right?
I said, if we're sitting here at 7-5 at the end of next year, it's time to put his ass on the hot seat and start looking elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It starts to, because you when you bring in a guy like Matt Rule, year 3 is where you're really putting your chips in. Like obviously, year 1 was what it was, but he's resetting the culture, and then year 2, okay, obviously still some meat on the bone, but we got to a bowl game. Year 3 is when he's popped everywhere else, and now he's got more talents and resources and money than he's ever had before. If he can't win with that, then
here's my thing about it is year 1 with Frost guys, he was 5-3 heading into November, and then lost out in a wide open Big Ten West, which it felt like we were, not in the driver's seat, but we were at the top there with what the Big Ten West had to offer. But you're like, oh well, that's year 1. Year 2, we're 5-1, and we have the world at our feet, and then we finish 6-6, which again, with beating Colorado, who's a top 25 team, as badly as we did at home, and we had Illinois on the ropes at home, and we kind of pissed that one away. In year 3, if he doesn't get to 9 or 10 wins, it's like now it's a pattern of he can't win important games.
I think it's important to think about, like, if there's another stretch where we're like the 5-1 or 5-3 and we just lose like 4 or 5 in a row, I agree with you. Obviously, you don't want to lose, and I'm not sitting here saying, oh, it's okay if we only win this many or whatever. I think what you're saying to me means if we go on a losing streak again, that's when it's time to start pulling the brakes on Matt Rule and just say, okay, we got to find somebody else. But I also think that he gets Dylan's tenure in Nebraska. So if this year goes poorly and he leaves, then I think that it wouldn't be out of the world to say he might move on from Matt Rule. So I think that's another important part.
I'm not even thinking about Dylan in any of this. It's year 3 and year 4 for coaches are historically the most important years because that means they're your guys.
Right.
Well, in a time now where you can flip a roster quicker than ever.
Well, exactly. You look at what Signetti did, and he did it in year 1. And Matt Rule had that opportunity in year 1 where he was sitting at 5-3 at the end of October, and then again, we don't get it done. Year 2, you're sitting at 5-1, and you finish 6-6. You don't get it done. I mean, fuck a losing streak. Like, there can be no losing streak this year.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think Dylan Raiola is going to sit around for a 7-win team. And yeah, like if we get 7 wins, 1, I think Dylan's gone, and 2, Matt Rule should be gone with him.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because I imagine it's not impossible for there to be a conversation with the Raiolas, the new royal family in Lincoln, be like, hey, we don't think this is the guy. Here's who we think would be best, and here's who, not to like twist any arms, but like, here's what we have in mind for Dylan for his third and hopefully final football season in college. And if Matt Rule's not that guy, then I could see that. Hope it doesn't get there. I don't think it gets there, but
I don't think it would. Yeah, I don't think it would get there because I think he would just leave. I don't think that they would be sitting there saying, "Oh, you should hire this guy." I think he would just go.
Well, there was also murmurs this year about teams trying to poach Dylan away. I know I heard Miami was one that was kind of lurking around, and there was some steam with that, and that's why Dylan had that Instagram story that said "all in." But I mean, he and his family knows they have options. So
yeah.
I think 2 years at Nebraska, and he's like a 500 quarterback. Like, in my mind, he's for sure gone.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be mad at him for that either.
No, not at all.
Yeah, there's only so much benefit of the doubt you can give somebody, and I feel like, and I'll speak for myself, I think I've given Matt Rule a ton of benefit of the doubt. Like, okay, well, you had to build this whole new staff on the go coming from the NFL, so you maybe miss on a guy like Marcus Satterfield. Fine, okay, we'll get it right the second time. Or the transfers that you bring in from year 1 to year 2 don't hit as well as you think that they're going to. Okay, it's your first go with the transfer portal. Really, you get a mulligan, but those mulligans run out real quickly after year 3, where we're like, okay, well, now we got to make another change at a coordinator spot, or another crop of super high potential transfers fail to be productive. Now that's we're running thin there.
I think the warning signs for me are the biggest problem. Like, if you ask anyone across the country how they thought Scott Satterfield would work out at Nebraska, I don't think anyone would have been like, oh, yeah, really rooting for that guy. He can coach ball. So already strike 1 there with Rule, even hiring him. And strike 2 was this year's portal class that just got done. Year 2's portal class was just a big whiff. So I think that's why he hired Dana and Phil Snow and Mosey and, the Kansas City Chiefs D-line coach to help with that, to identify talent. But yeah, we got to start getting some stuff right and getting 8-9 win seasons to feel good about this being a good hire.
I have been the biggest hater of Marcus Satterfield. So just keep that in mind when I say this. He must be good at something, because if he was able to get Dylan to buy in to coming to Nebraska with him as OC, he must be good at talking about football, because he's certainly not good at calling football games. So there must be something about him that he's really good at that tricks people. So I'm not trying to make excuses for Matt Rule, but there's got to be something there with Marcus Satterfield where he makes people buy into what the bullshit that he's spewing, and then just can't execute what he's talking about. I'm not sure.
But still, as the guy who hires him, like, for him not working out, you take the blame.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying, like, I think that's why he was hired, because he's good at talking his way through the idea of football, but not very good at executing what he's saying.
Yeah, just not a good OC.
Absolutely.
Agreed. Oh, great. And it might have been a situation, and you hate that it comes out like this, but if Matt Rule's scrambling to get his staff going and got to get on the road immediately as he gets hired on that Thanksgiving weekend, it's like, man, maybe Marcus Satterfield isn't my first choice, but I want to have time to vet out my first and second choice. I just need somebody here who I trust, and maybe that's kind of how it worked out. But now the staff, with the addition of Terry Braden from the Chiefs, and they just brought in the former defensive coordinator from UCF, who big high ceiling guy, number one pass defense in the Big 12. They bring him in as their DB coach. It's starting to feel like this is the staff that Matt Rule wants and that he trusts. Phil Snow back in the game. Of course, Mosey coming back in. So if there were any, well, we just got to fill seats as they have to rebuild this staff from scratch. Now these are his guys. Like, there's no more benefit of the doubt there.
Yeah, it better be.
Yeah.
We're all saying the same things. It's
Yeah.
I think there's just kind of a nervous energy. It's like when you missed on so many head coaches, like, we all know the warning signs, and there are some there for Matt Rule. So
Yeah.
I think it's just we need to see one go through, and by that I mean have a 9-3 year, at least.
Yeah, I'm so scared if Matt Rule doesn't work out.
Terrifying.
Then what? I mean,
because he's the rebuilder guy.
Yeah.
He's not even like the championship guy. He's just the get back to the 9-10 wins guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's the problem. I still think it'll work out. I think we're all still very optimistic, but this is kind of what it looks like if it doesn't, which is a problem. Yeah. And we'll talk more about the bowl game next week, but how much would the Pinstripe needle, or how much would the Pinstripe Bowl move the needle for you guys as far as having some sense of security?
Or I kind of like that we got this poll, because it takes so long to get to a bowl game, and if you're able to win that bowl game, I think it means more. Like, obviously, it'd be cool to go play in a big, like, New Year's Day bowl game, but I think it's just as cool to win a bowl game. So I'm for that.
I think just optically, this is so crazy to say, but if you win the bowl game, you say, all right, you're 7-6. We've had our first winning year in 8 years. But if you lose the bowl game, you're 6-7 now, and you only have one more win than you did last year, and you still had 7 losses.
Mm-hmm.
I think,
that's huge.
It's optically, like, it's kind of an illusion. I don't think it matters too much. Making a bowl is a big deal. I would like to see us just play well in it, but it's either going to leave a good taste in people's mouth this year or a sour one. So I think there is a little pressure for them to win this one.
And I don't think it's bad pressure, because I think all these guys want to win this game, especially the older guys. But I see what you're saying, how the 7-6 looks a whole lot better than 6-7. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's just a narrative where it's like, truthfully, it's only one game, and it's a postseason game.
Yeah, doesn't
but
really a whole lot.
At the end of the year, when you see 7-6, you're like, oh, that's a winning season. But when you see 6-7, you're like, oh, that's only one game off of what we were in 22.
Agreed. And I mean, it like resets the clock a little bit. Like obviously we've ended this bowl drought. Now we would be ending the bowl win drought that comes with the long bowl drought to begin with. I do think we're kind of overestimating how bad it would feel to lose to Boston College with their backup quarterback. Whether or not that's fair, and I don't think that we have much room to stand on as far as we should be beating teams like Boston College, but I do think optically that would feel very bad. I think that would feel worse than it would feel good to beat them. But I agree. I think this is such a great draw. I would much rather lose, or I would much rather win a shitty bowl game than get to go to a really big game and then lose. Next year may be a different story, but this year I want to win more than anything. I don't care if it's in the Bronx. I don't care if we go to, and it doesn't matter where, doesn't matter who.
Yeah.
Just win the fucking game.
Yep.
Hell yeah.
Let's see here in transfer portal news. Not a whole lot's dropped in the last week, but I did kind of want to get your guys' thoughts. There's a whole nother transfer portal window after the bowl season's up. Is there anybody who you think will not be with the team next year that is currently on the team?
Got a couple. So I mentioned to you guys Fedoni. I think he'll probably leave. And I don't think it's going to be one of those situations where he necessarily wants to leave super bad. But I think with Harburg and potentially Carter Nelson going back to tight end, I think he's going to get kind of forced out. And I think they're going to be upfront with him about that, especially since Borkature is staying.
Is he?
Another guy. Yeah, he withdrew his name from the portal.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did not see he withdrew, but okay.
Yeah. And then another guy I think is Tristan Alvano. I think he's going to try to go somewhere else. I mean, he's just not working very well here, unfortunately. So he'll probably go to a Maction school and kick some balls for them. We'll see. Those are the two guys on top of my head.
I think Alvano is as good as gone after how good Hull looked to end the year and finally found his stride. I think the Tristan Alvano experience is over for sure. At least one tight end's probably gone. And I think maybe a guy in the secondary who isn't happy with his role going forward is going to enter.
We already lost one. Boodle.
Yeah. And I think you may see one or two more out of that position group.
What do we think happens with Dowdle? Do you think he sticks around?
See, that's another interesting one.
That's a good one.
He could go too.
Especially because I was reading today, and I think this is all kind of bullshit, but they were saying that to get Emmett Johnson to come back, we gave him a certain percentage of snaps that he's guaranteed to play this year. I don't think that's true. But if they do have something set up like that, I don't think Dowdle sticks around. I think he's going to go.
Yeah. I think Dowdle should go. I personally just don't think in his current state he's a Power 5 running back. Like, he could figure it out. Like, he has all the athletic tools to be very good, but he just hasn't done anything on the field to show anyone that he is good enough to compete at this level.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I would like him to stay. I just wouldn't put it past Nebraska to go and try to get another guy in the portal, and I think that opens up the door. But if you tell me that we run him back with Emmett Johnson and Dowdell, I'm very happy with that. Because I do think that Dowdell could be a very high-end Power 5 running back. I just think that there's still some polish that needs to be done. And it probably wasn't super ready to be the workhorse, where I think Emmett Johnson very much is now. So I would be stoked. Emmett Johnson goes for 1,400 yards, goes to the NFL, and then we get a workhorse year out of Dowdell the next year. That would be great.
The only way I'll be happy with him staying is if it's very clear from the jump that he is the number 2 going into this year.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if it's anything other than that.
Yeah.
Because if you were comfortable with him being the workhorse, then I think you just leave EJ go and you send the back man elsewhere.
Yeah. But it sounds like that Louisiana Monroe, freshman running back who just put up 1,300 yards, is on our radar. And who knows if we're even running the ball a ton next year with year 2 of Dylan Raiola and some of the portal guys that we're looking at, the Cal guy, FIU. I think we may be a pass first team moving forward.
So then what do we think about Jalen Lloyd leaving, if that's the case?
It would suck if he left because I do see a ton of potential in him, but
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't be the worst thing.
Yeah, oh man, that's the thing. It would stink, just like Daniel Kalen leaving. Like
Yeah.
I get it. I'm happy for him. I hope it works out in Virginia. But man, it stinks. But they are targeting a couple of high profile wide receivers in the portal. And with the roster constraints, might just get a bit too crowded.
Yep. Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah.
But I think, especially that Louisiana Tech back, I think that's the one that would be the domino where Dowdell would check out. But overall, I think we're in a good spot. I think we're gonna. I feel much more confident with Rule's vision of the portal this year. Now that he's had a year to kind of reflect and get used to it, and it seems like he's going after more productive guys as opposed to potential guys, which I mean, outside of Williams, is exactly what we've been asking for, which is exactly what you saw from Signetti, which is exactly like those guys that pop for Coach Sanders. Those are production guys. Now you just give them a bigger stage, and what do you know? They produce.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I do have another question for you guys. So with the roster limits, what they are now, or I guess going into next year, I mean, what is it? It's still 105 guys, so it's not a small amount of guys that you have. But do you think we're trending toward any sort of like practice squad that you could potentially have, kind of like the NFL, where, I mean, you saw last year with Nebraska, they lost 4 or 5 wide receivers that year. Like, I know you have a ton of them on your roster, but as you start to thin out, like, what do you do? Because there's no like free agency that you can just go pick up a guy. So what do you guys think about that?
That would make a lot of sense. But I mean, we're counting on the NCAA to be forward thinking here, which they have shown no evidence of doing. Because you're right. I mean, if you do lose a wide receiver, as I understand, if you lose a wide receiver for the year, you just kind of eats up that roster spot. And yeah, you have 105 players that you probably figure out, but man, it stinks for a program like Nebraska that could have 150 guys ready to run through a wall, but because of these rules, can't. And now they're just sitting there twiddling their thumbs.
I doubt it. I doubt that NCAA does anything like that. 105 roster spots is still a ton.
Yes.
Especially when you, like, in a year, you probably, like, if all goes well, you probably only play 50 to 60 guys. So
yeah,
I think you just have to plan out your roster spots a little bit better than you did when it was like 150. But yeah, I don't think we would go towards anything like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, it would be insanely improbable for you to lose like all of your quarterbacks or all of your running backs. But there's not a 0 chance that happens. So then, like, what do you do in that circumstance? That's all I was curious about.
I don't know. You can go add guys in October.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I don't know what you do at that point, but
so hopefully they have thought about that or at least are thinking about it, and they find some sort of solution. I don't know what that solution is, whether it's a practice squad or what, but yeah, just something interesting I was thinking about.
Well, last thing I wanted to talk about, we have a new Heisman Trophy winner, Travis Hunter, who's won the Heisman Trophy. I guess I like Genty better. I think the award should reward excellence as opposed to versatility, which I didn't realize was a category to win the Heisman until this year. What do you guys think?
Hater Brandon's got it fucking in his bag today. I'm excited to hear what he has to say.
I would have liked to see it be Genty personally. I think his storyline was a little bit better and more impressive, but at the end of the day, realistically, I think they got it right.
Yeah.
A two-way guy who was an elite wide receiver and a very good cornerback is hard to pass up on for a Heisman.
I agree. It's tough though. Here we go. It's tough
Love it.
because Genty literally carried his team to the playoff, and that's not nothing. So that's hard. I mean, you can't go wrong with either of them, I don't think. But I would have liked to see Genty win it. But I mean, I'm not super upset about it or anything.
I guess if I were to put my hater Brandon hat on, it would look something along the lines of, I just wonder what it would have looked like if Genty had put forth the same kind of effort to pad his stats and to campaign on national television and on the podcast circuit as Travis Hunter did. Because if you tell me there's a world where he does, or maybe Travis Hunter just chills out and focuses on football and maybe doesn't force 3 touchdowns down Oklahoma State's throat in a 55-0 win last game of the season, and he still wins, then so be it. I mean, he had a really great season. I do think it's crazy that he won the Biletnikoff. I don't see a world where he's the best wide receiver, but it is what it is.
I think they had to do that though.
I think maybe they did that because they knew. Yeah, I don't know.
I think so too.
I think it was kind of a business decision to give him the Biletnikoff.
I will say this about Travis. I think if he dedicated himself to just playing wide receiver, I think he wins that in a landslide. I think he could have been one of the best seasons as a wide receiver ever, with how much they throw the ball and their commitment to seemingly force feed him at some moments in the season. I think he could have just had crazy numbers.
But the problem is, when we talk about usage, there were still other track stars on that Colorado receiving core that really open things up if you try to force feed Travis Hunter so much. And that's another thing that's so impressive about Genty, is that you knew that that's how they were going to beat you. And outside of an Oregon team, the number 1 team in the country, by 3 points, nobody else could do that. Where I think if Travis Hunter did decide to just play one side of the field, it would have been easier to negate him as opposed to Ashton Genty.
Yeah.
I think the biggest flaw was Boise State should have been trying to stat pad for Genty a little bit more, because if he would have broken Barry Sanders' record, I don't think there would have been any denying him for a Heisman. But the fact that they just sat him in how many games, or the second half of how many games, is like, I mean, he still did have video game numbers. They were crazy, but they should have actively done everything in their power to help him break that record.
Yeah, but then you're looking at it like I said, he was their whole team, and no disrespect to any of the Boise State players, but Genty was the driving force of that team. And if he gets hurt, then it's all for naught. I mean, I see what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying. It's hard to not protect your greatest asset.
And I don't know. I absolutely get that, and they're worried about the team success. But if they were worried about him getting the Heisman, that's what they should have done, I'm saying.
Yes, yeah.
No right or wrong with what they did. Like, I get it. They have big aspirations, like the college, but I don't think they matter their result, just that.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's not like he was that far off from Barry Sanders' record. He was only, I guess if you factor in the conference championship game, it was just 132 yards shy of it.
Which he could still get, right?
Yeah.
So he could still beat that.
But then you kind of look at him like, okay, well, now he's playing 14 games.
And it wouldn't be as impressive for sure, but I mean, it's still pretty cool to have.
But yeah, and I think that would have held a lot of weight in this conversation, because it was fairly close. It was as close as it's been since 2009, and I think when you have something like that, it can certainly flip the script a bit there. But as much as I love to be a hater, Brandon, if there is a guy on that Colorado team that like I don't hate rooting for, it would be Travis Hunter. So I'm not gonna try to shit on his season all that much.
Yeah,
Agreed.
All right, fellas. Well, that's all that I had. Got bowl game starting up this week. What are you looking forward to the most about bowl season?
Playoff.
Nebraska playing.
Bang. I love it. All right, fellas. Any final thoughts?
Go Big Red.
Go Big Red.
Go Big Red.